Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Workers' Village. This is a 4-cost action card from Prosperity, and it says +1 card, +2 actions, and +1 buy. So this is obviously just the regular card Village from the base game, but with an extra buy, and it costs 4. Now, if you want to know more about these cantrip villages, as we call them, like the regular type of village, you should watch the video about Village in the base game series. I'm not going to cover the basics of villages. There's no point. There's lots of village cards. You might as well just watch that video if you want to know. Instead, I'm going to talk about basically what makes Workers' Village different. So Workers' Village pushes the strategy heavily in favour of strong engines for that kingdom. This is one of the stronger variants of Village. What's more powerful? There's Wandering Minstrel, there's Border Village. I think that's it in the rankings. This is like the third best Village variant. Basically, the Village also has +1 card on it. It's in the top 15% of all Kingdom cards, which is very, very good, actually. How strong is a Village, really, when you compare it to other cards? It's hard to say, but villages are very important cards, so I like to think of them as pretty strong, right? A kingdom that lacks a village tends to be pretty weak, so they do a lot of heavy lifting sometimes. Anyway, so it's village with a +buy. Does the buy matter at all? What makes it card so strong? So usually you want +buys when you're building an engine in order to make the engine more worthwhile. So we talk a lot about, the difference between an engine that can only single province and one that can gain like multiple provinces per turn. Like if the final output of your engine is very restricted because there's no +buy, then there's a big decision on how far do you even build. What can you actually do? When is it worth just gaining cards to achieve what, really? In addition to that, +buys lets you ramp up faster, lets you buy more engine components while you're building your deck. Just throw lots of cards in very quickly, and that tends to be pretty strong. So usually you need +buys to start doing that as well at some point. Now, of course, you also need villages in order to build most engines. And the good thing with the Workers' Village is that when this is in the kingdom, you've got both of these showing up together. So you've got your village to build the engine, and you've got the +buys to help the engine actually do something decent as well. So this makes it much, much more likely that there's going to be a strong engine in the kingdom, because you've already covered 2 of the bases that you need. You just add draw, bit of trashing, something payload, and you've got an insanely good engine, right? You tend to gain many villages when you build an engine, and so if you're buying Workers' Village, you're just going to end up with all the extra buys you need. You might even end up with more buys than you need, quite frankly. This is very, very efficient, lets you focus gaining cards on what you need for other parts of your deck. So it means that you're not having to spend gains just to get the +buy. You can be buying more villages, more draw, more payload, instead of buying, what's a bad buy card? Having to go out of your way to gain herbalists or something, So even if there are other good villages present, often I find that I tend to gain at least some Workers' Villages too, just because, although other villages, maybe they're not giving me much other bonus. A lot of villages tend to just be the village effect with a tiny bonus on top, and maybe some of them might be more useful, but just the efficiency of gaining +buy, I might gain Workers' Villages until I've got enough buys that I need, and then I can go and look towards other villages to give me other effects instead of buys that, frankly, I'm never going to spend. It is worth noting that in the expansion Prosperity itself, that Workers' Village is a part of, there's a whole bunch of other cards, more than normal in an expansion, that really get to take advantage of excess +buys. So that means that Workers' Village feels a little bit stronger when you're mostly playing with Prosperity cards. So normally if you're new to an expansion, you bought the physical version, you might play a game with only Prosperity, or you might have Prosperity and base. You're not really playing with that big a card pool. Workers' Village can feel really powerful in these scenarios, just because you've got these cards that go really well with it. So in Prosperity, we've got Peddler, which lets you just gain a whole bunch of them with excess +buys, because the cost drops to 0, so very strong. You've got Quarry, which is a really, really good cost reduction, and man, you really like cost reduction with plus buy and Workers' Village. Like, you just suddenly, like, you're buying tons and tons of engine components very quickly. And then, of course, there's the good old Goons that let you trade all of your buys for points. And so that's it for Workers' Village. There's not really much for me to say. It is a very, very basic card. It's just a village, really, with plus buy. So we're going to move on to Kingdom Analysis already. And we're going to force Workers' Village into some kingdoms, and we're going to see how good it is. So I noticed straight away there's Wharf, which is another card that gives you ridiculous amounts of plus buys. There's also Chapel. So we've got one of the best draw cards in the game. We've got one of the best trash cards in the game. We've got one of the best villages in the game. And for payload, we have... Well, is Sea Hag even worth it with Chapel? Probably not. With an engine this strong. But there's also Horde to gain a lot of golds very quickly. And we can even be buying like mills and harems to get an absolute ton of golds. And we can use those golds to buy a load of wharves, buy loads of Workers' Villages. And quite frankly, we have too many plus buys. And it's worth noting that Workers' Village is the only buy here. But Wharf is actually very efficient in terms of actions because you only play it every other turn. So... yeah, we don't even care about the buys on Workers' Village here, funnily enough, because we've got Wharf. So we are just getting thin. We're buying Workers' Village, Wharf, Merchant, Mill, Horde. Those are the main things, really. We can even buy some harems and just get a ton of golds and treasures, but, we only need to build so much, really. Venture's pointless. Salvager, we're never going to get around to using it. So this is just a nuts engine, really. And funnily enough, you could have swapped Workers' Village for any, like, cantrip village, and it probably would have been equally nuts. So it's doing its village thing there, but it's very good. Here we have King's Court and Throne Room as other kinds of villages alongside Workers' Village. For draw, we only have Alchemist and Moat. Oh, and there's Tactician. But Tactician seems bad because all of the money comes from treasures. So I don't think we're going to be Tacticianing. I would like to King's Court like Alchemists to draw. That sounds pretty good. Other than that, what else are you doing? Well, there's Horde again, and also Treasure Map as ways to gain payload. There's also Platinum Colony, so we've got the ability to build quite big. The only problem in this kingdom is that there is no trashing at all. So we really want Alchemist with like King's Court in order to actually draw our deck. The fact that Workers' Village is also the only plus buy, I mean, there is Tactician, but we're not really going to be able to use Tactician. So that's important. That allows us to gain like throne rooms for using Alchemist. And then if we've got a load of actions, we can use Moat to supplement our draw. So we desperately want to draw in this kingdom. We do have things like Horde to gain money with, I guess, if we want to. But, we're really hurting for draw. The draw is not great, given we can't trash. But we can build a powerful engine that I think is going to beat everything. And for that, we actually want Workers' Village mostly for the buys, to be honest, because we got King's Court and Throne Room for the plus action. So Workers' Village, again, has filled in a gap. In the last kingdom, it was the village, and in this one, it's the plus buy. So Workers' Village is good. I don't know how many of them you actually need. You don't really need that many, but, it helps to some extent with Moat as well if you're using that for draw. Moat's pretty cheap. Alchemist, Potion, it's sort of cheap in coin cost, so you can do a lot with the plus buys. Talisman might be useful here as well, actually. I might get a Talisman at some point. You can get Throne Rooms. You might even be able to grab 2 treasure maps with the Talisman if you're getting it anyway to get like extra moats and so on. So I think it's good there as well. So Workers' Village, very important in that kingdom. Kingdom number 3, we have Nobles and Festival as other villages alongside Workers' Village. For draw, we've got Council Room, and we've got Minion, and we've got Nobles. There is Golem, which is also kind of a village, but it feels pretty bad here, honestly. We've got Bishop for trashing. So this is another Colony Platinum game. We do want to trash. I don't think we're doing a Gardens thing. The question is, do we do a minion-style deck with, like, festivals, or do we do, like, council room? Well, I think I would rather draw over minion. Council room feels pretty nice regardless. I guess what you can do is, well, no, I was going to say you can draw out with council room and then use a minion discard attack to stop your opponent from having loads of cards in the hand, but I guess it doesn't matter. I think we just help each other out. Well, you don't really need council room because you've got nobles, right? You can draw with workers' village nobles. The only problem I see with this kingdom is how do you actually, like, what's the payload? Bishop is pretty good, but how are you gaining stuff to bishop? It would be really nice if there was a gainer or something, or like some way of like having treasures for payload to like gain them quickly, but there isn't. The lack of a gainer is unfortunate. It makes building the engine feel a little awkward because you've got to be like buying platinums, but I think that's still what you do. So I think what we do is I would rather have like workers' village over festival, I think, here, because I'm going to be going for like council room and nobles as my draw over minion. We will have a bishop anyway. It's this sort of kingdom where it's probably okay to open bishop, even though you don't necessarily want to do that. And we open like bishop silver, and we do just start to thin a little bit. And eventually the deck suddenly explodes and we get to buy golds and platinums. And we're just going to buy some treasures and a bunch of draw. And the plus buy of workers' village is okay here. The thing is we're going to be buying like platinum a bunch. We actually just want some buy later on, and council room might also give us some of that as well. So I don't think the plus buy on workers' village is actually all that useful, to be honest. I guess we get like spare pearl divers or whatever. But yeah, like it's a good village. It's the only village which has actually got plus card on it. Festival is nice, but here there's more competition for 5 costs. Maybe like you want to be getting to 6 and getting nobles, and I think there's just going to be plenty of time opportunities to grab workers' villages, especially if we're like trashing with bishop. And like there's a lot of trashing going on early. I think we're going to be able to accumulate some workers' villages. So yeah, I think workers' village is fine here. I can see you might have the opportunity where you might want to get some festivals or something. So maybe don't necessarily get that many. I don't know. But yeah, the plus buy is okay here as well on it. But, you know, it's a village. I'm probably getting some. So using it in every kingdom so far. Well, I've spotted straight away that we have goons. Workers' village. There's also bridge as well, so there's lots of very good payload for an engine. Our only trashing is salvager and island, which are a bit sad, but they're okay. You know, we can get salvager, trash some estates, and we also have apothecary for a while. I think apothecary's good here, actually. Like, we could... the problem is you can't really open potion, but you know what? It would be really nice, actually, to instead open potion, get an apothecary, and hope that helps you hit goons at some point, but that is slow. That is, you know, you buy the potion, you buy the apothecary on your second shuffle, then you buy the goons on like the third shuffle, but I think that works out. Yeah, what's the draw? That's the main problem with this kingdom. There's the discard attack with goons, and the only way to increase your hand size is like apothecary and havens from other turns. You know, there is apothecary seller, but that's normally not very good. See, the problem is that we want a crazy engine payload, but like we're never getting a bridge mega turn off because we can't really, is the problem. Like there's no draw. And for that reason, like we still want to play goons as often as we can. So I'm actually thinking, like, we will get a salvager at some point, but maybe we're not that fussed and actually trashing coppers that much. Like, we've got apothecary as an alternative to trashing, and maybe we will get there eventually, but apothecary is sort of the only draw card. So maybe we do actually have to do apothecary seller stuff just because the actual output of the engine, which is playing multiple goons, is just so absurdly strong that we're actually willing to do that, even though it's going to take a while. It's going to be pretty flaky. Like, if you can just constantly hit your opponent with goons every turn, what else can you do? Like, there's no real counter to it, and it just hurts a lot. So here, Workers' Village is our only village, and really that's why it's important. The plus buy, is nice when we're buying like apothecary. We might be able to get like a cellar along with it, or a haven or something. But yeah, it's not super important here. What am I talking about? There's goons, so like in an end turn, like you have multiple goons in play, you have the ability to just like mass buy a load of coppers, and that's exceptional. Actually, that's a point. The apothecary allows us, we're going to be buying coppers to get goons points, and the apothecary lets us like draw them a bit more easily. So we are still going to want to trash coppers with salvager just to prevent being flooded with them. But that's a nice thing. So I think I open potion, and I think I want 1 silver. I guess I can always salvage it later. So that's what I'm doing. Workers' Village is really nice. The fact that it gives +buy makes goons just go bananas here, I think, which is what makes the engine worth doing, even though like there's no real draw. It's like apothecary cellar. It's not really draw, but I think you try it anyway. And so the final kingdom, we have Workers' Village with Ironworks. That's quite nice. We've also got Bazaar, Nobles as other villages, so 3 villages there. And Ironworks lets us gain Workers' Villages and Masquerade, so we've actually got a draw engine going already with Ironworks, and we can trash with Masquerade, so it's already looking very strong. In terms of payload, like what are we doing with this engine? Well, there's Witch, there's Grand Market, which is very good, and there's Bank as well, which is probably not going to work out here. We just want some grand markets, I think. So, yeah, we're going to see how we can get a grand market. So we're going to open Masquerade Ironworks. Do we bother with a loan? Maybe not. I think Masquerade's good enough trashing. At some point we want silvers in order to get to grand market, and we probably get some witches while we're at it. And Workers' Village, we will certainly be getting some. We're going to be playing Masquerade to draw, and we can play like witches with it to draw, or nobles, or so on. So having a bit of draw will be helpful, but the main aim is that we want to play as many grand markets as we can. For that reason, the +buy and Workers' Village is not actually that useful, but it is a very good village here, right? You can gain it with Ironworks, and that makes it very good. So yeah, I guess that's our thing. So that was it. 5 out of 5 kingdoms. Workers' Village was really important in all of them, and that tends to be the case. Like Workers' Village, that's why it's like so good. Really, like it's a good price for a village, and what it's giving you is actually very efficient. So yeah, and you know, being a village means that you get the engine, you actually get to play with it. So anyway, I hope that was useful for you. Just wasn't much to talk about with Workers' Village. It's just vanilla bonuses. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.